Well, hello Madrid. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Apologies for speaking in English. I do apologize. This is your country. As a typical Brit, I don't speak Spanish, so I do apologize. But there is a translation going on, which I hope will be clear and will explain everything. AV is a magazine I edit. A little bit of information about it. Won't go into too much detail. I think we're running quite late, so I'll keep it short. We basically are very critical of technology, and we give the manufacturers and vendors a very hard time. Digital signage right at the top of the pile. Is it any use? Why are people buying it? Why should you invest in it? So people have a lot of convincing to do to make us realize what you need to get out of this stuff. Figures have been very difficult for me to get hold of, but we do talk to our readers who use this stuff right across Europe and the UK. And what I've tried to put together is figures I could get hold of and some use to find out what people are actually doing with digital signage, and more importantly, what they should be doing with it. Obviously, we look at the audio-visual market. It's growing very quickly. Lots of technologies of which digital signage is one. Lots of growth, lots of impressive figures. Talk to a manufacturer, sales are going through the roof. But of course, when you try and find out why, the picture isn't very clear, especially when it comes to Europe. And there are lots of factors. Hardware cost. Customers now beginning to understand how to use digital signage, although I've put that up there, supporting a brand strategy. Not many people are doing that. That's far too advanced. They're still at the much basic level. There are certain things happening in Europe. Fragmented market emerging now. Content clearly is very important, and it's being very successful. It's what people are doing well in Europe. I tried to get figures from the analysts. They're very difficult to get hold of. A colleague of mine, Mike Fisher at Future Source, which is a UK analyst organisation, presented the first graph I've seen of quite what we have as usage of digital signage in Europe by country, ad-based and non-ad-based. So it gives you some idea. UK and Germany, obviously a massive base in the US. And it gives you some idea of how small the rollouts are, even though they're quite impressive numbers in their way. They're still relatively small compared to what could be happening further down the line. And of course, you know, the Americans don't quite realize this, but of course Europe is very different to America. And there are a number of, or two or three, quite essential differences. One of which is the distribution channel. In the States, the audiovisual market sells digital signage into a range of very established markets. Over here, it's handled much more locally with a culture involved. There are much smaller markets, very small implementations, and the whole markets are run by local integrators. The Americans are sort of put off because of the learning curve they have to use to understand the language, the local culture, what local companies want to do with technology, and they're not really investing in that yet. Their presence in Europe is relatively low. It's still very much, for them, a quite specialized channel. And also in Europe, a lot of the smaller companies are scared by the investment they need to make into really what will make digital signage work properly, which is integration into the back end of all the IT and everything else that actually matches the interaction you have with a customer with the back-end systems that are running these companies. So we thought, oh, right then, we have a lot of readers, UK and Europe, what are you doing with this stuff? And this is what they said. I think it's hopefully quite clear. Let me just get onto the thing. Okay, the fastest growing areas, retail brand promotion, sports, entertainment and leisure. I suppose you would expect all that, wouldn't you? But also internal communications. That's quite a an interesting growing market. Of course, when you think about it, companies have lots of ways of linking their operations into digital signage and everything else. Everything they do is potentially quite visual. So that's a fast-growing market. We also asked them, what would prevent them from buying? Why won't you be buying? Which is, of course, in the current state in Europe at the moment, is actually quite an important question. And the top of the list came lack of return on investment, reluctance to commit to capital expenditure. What a surprise. Big investment is needed in these rollouts. The two things that can really sort of be a major barrier is that how isolated the rollouts can be compared to the rest of the business. They're not connected. And a well-planned installation built to address clear objectives can achieve a very attractive return on investment. But not many people are doing it. Again, with the Greek question, with the austerity measures that we've all got in our own countries at the moment, consumer demand is relatively flat. And in retail or whatever business you're in, all businesses across Europe are under huge pressure. Clearly, there are highlights like internal communications, leisure and transportation. But actually, within this doom and gloom scenario, digital signage, if used properly, can be this viewer engagement tool. It can communicate you better with your customers if you use the technology properly. As I say, I've just run through this quickly because I was a bit behind. You've got to define clear objectives, engage with customers, and offer them incentives to buy something or share information with you. Why should they give you information if you don't provide them with a reason or provide whatever interaction you have as attractive as possible? You can use that information to know more about them and then deliver back to them what they need. Again, this thing is dwell time, which is how much you spend at whatever screen you're at, is a big deal at the moment, and companies have a way of gathering contact information. This chap here, Phil Capper, who's Managing Director of Attain, it's a database marketing company, and I saw him in a UK show last week in London, and he was on his own. Instead of being integrated with other digital signage companies, which actually put the two together, where you could see how to get the investment out of this stuff and actually engage your customers, he was on his own stand with the wind blowing through. No one was going on. I thought, why are you over there with that chap? I said, well, people don't think, they don't put the two together. There's no joined-up thinking going on, which summed up a lot of things, I must admit. Return on investment, content strategy. Again, it's absolutely key, and it's what Europe does well, content. And the right content, the most important factor, if you want to make your network or whatever, however you're doing with this digital signage, a successful one. Interesting bits that I tried to pick up on was this business about measurement, which is really topical. Advertising is still waiting for proper metrics. There's nothing that people agree on that they can judge technology by a level playing field. They're still trying to get proper metrics that everybody agrees on. And one thing I did see last week was Intel. And Intel, about a couple of years ago, acquired a company called Cognovision from Canada. And it's a sort of visual technology you should be looking out for. Of course, as a major IT vendor, they complicate the name of it. Intel calls it its Audience Impression Metrics Suite, as a vendor would do, of course. Very complicated. But it takes 3 data points. It detects the number of people looking at your screen, works out their gender and age group, and measures how long they spend looking at a particular thing on screen. And from then it works out how long customers, whether they like the clothing or whatever it might be being sold through that screen, what's catching their eye, what's buying, what are they buying, and where the high traffic areas are, which are the more popular sites. And some of these audience measurement things are coming on stream, and the market's beginning to produce them. So it's something you need to watch, because they're appearing quite quietly. Which brings us on to really the point of digital signage, which is this big bugbear amongst journalists, the so what factor. What's the point of having it if you don't integrate it into your business? It's people now are buying my mobile phone. You may have heard about this near-field communication stuff, which is basically when you have a phone, you go up to a screen and it presents a coupon on your phone. I think when you don't have a smartphone, you have a QR code, and it makes you work harder to get the same information. And the UK is running its first large-scale deployment of NFC at the moment. We're having a 4-week trial in Reading near London, trying to work out whether this stuff works or not. It's called the Test the New Future project, and it's being run by Kinetic and JC Deco, and 13 brands have provided content and NFC voucher experiences on 300 bus shelters in the town. And we're trying to cry out, well, whether people really use this stuff and what data companies themselves can get from it. But most significantly, it's this endpoint here, which, as an IT journalist for 25 years, I'd sort of come across digital signage, and I thought, a bunch of screens on a network. What's the point of it? If there are no big rollouts, you have to ask yourself why. And there are no big rollouts because there's no one with integration expertise that understands and works with the bigger picture. There's no one that communicates with the head of a big company, retailer, or whoever it is. They can say, well, this stuff can transform how you communicate with your customers, improve your brand. No one talks big. And these are big players. SAP, interestingly, has just signed a strategic partnership agreement with a mobile business development firm called Sysio, and also has gotten to bed with three other firms, Accelerator, Adobe, and Accenture, to create any type of mobile presence, working with digital signage and a variety of other things. And that's the sort of company that has high-end stuff, right through a company where you've got your front-end intuitive stuff working with legacy systems, very old computer stuff that may be 15, 20 years old, who knows. And these sort of lines are coming on stream to run. That's significant, and that's the whole point of all this. Now, I just did very briefly running costs. I won't go into all this now. All this will be available, just basic stuff that you might find useful, TCO calculations and what we've sort of found, and really what the next 12 months holds, which is, all I can say is think like your customers. They think of one brand, not multiple channels. They want to be able to buy what they want, when they want to buy it, wherever that is. So you have to create a richer, consumer-centric experience, to quote the jargon, wherever they are. But this is not going to be easy. You've got the legacy problem. You've got all kinds of problems with the back end. New solutions have to coexist in talking to old computer systems. Installation costs, well, we know we've done a good job of reducing digital signage, but if you're a brand operating 800 stores across Europe, capital expenditure is not insignificant. Actual insights, the jargony word, if you like, this is where you turn your analytics, the data you've got from the punter, the customer, into information you can use to run your business intelligence, if you like, to create efficiencies. And solutions, well, we've talked about NFC integrating with digital signage, so it's coming. You'll be able to give coupons through digital and actually be able to pay for goods through signage. That's coming. Which leads on to really what should be the start of all this, a prediction, which actually should be where we start from. We should have an order displays, individual IP address on a computer network, touch-enabled, tied to logistics, which can under order fulfillment, return requests, and other types of customers. We seem to be a long way from that. But all these vendors around here, lots of examples, lots of gee-whiz technology flashing around all over the place. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to get. And that's what we're nowhere near at the moment. And that's what Europe's got to deliver on. Beginning to appear in the US. But this is what we have to give the manufacturers a tough time about, to make sure they deliver this solution that makes our business tick. And by the way, we're 40 years old this year, so I thought I'd stick a plug in. And there we are. Thank you very much.